Welcome back everyone to JFace Games. Today we're talking about Quest. I talked about this game previously and some of the things I really liked about it, and I recently got to play it. Before I had read the rules and I loved the material and I loved the aesthetics of the game, but I hadn't actually been able to play it. I'd watched some YouTube videos on people playing it, but I hadn't had a chance to actually dig into it while I was away on vacation. And myself and 3 other friends, we decided to do a one-shot, but it was over 3 nights. And it was one of those things where they randomly wanted to do a one-shot, and I had Quest with me, and I said, all right, let's try it, having no prep at all. And we just used the book and went with it. And it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed the system. It felt tactical at times, even though it is not a tactical game. It's much more of a story-driven game. But some of the choices they have in terms of like how you use AP made it feel like the AP is in essence equivalent to the spark points in my system. It's that action points that you use to power some of your powers. Because there was some decision there, it gave it sort of a tactical feel. But really quickly, what I want to go into is 2 main things I really loved about the session that we had. The first thing, and I have Open Legend up here for a reason, the first thing is that there's a lot of games that have this sort of mechanic where when you miss, depending on how badly you miss, you can succeed with consequence, right? And Open Legends describes it as succeed with a twist. The Star Wars, or I guess it's the Genesis system with the dice that have like story-driven dice, it is the same concept. I might be succeed on my roll, but there might be like 3 dark side of the force showing, which means that that's a success with a twist or with a consequence. And theoretically, I loved this idea. I thought it was so cool and thematically. The problem I had with it is that when I ran Open Legend, it wasn't so. Yes, there is some cognitive load for the DM because they have to come up with consequences on the fly. But that's not a real problem if you've kind of played a lot and you have a lot of sort of like creative juices flowing in that sense, or you've got a repertoire, or if you've just done a bunch of things in that sense. The problem is that you feel like you're beating up your players sometimes, right? Because it feels like all of a sudden, oh, you now take more damage, or oh, now this is happening. And sometimes that might feel like a bummer, right? Depending on the playing group you're playing with, it might feel like the DM is now beating up on the players. And so I didn't like that feeling, right? I don't mind beating up my players, but it felt like it was forced in essence. Like all of a sudden, oh, now I get to tell you this happens to you. So Quest does something that it's hilarious because there's certain times that things are just said to you differently and you interpret them differently, and then it has this spark of inspiration. Quest, what it does is it just rolls a d20, and that's it. That's every time. There's no ACs, no DCs. You roll a d20 and you see what you get. But it has this concept, instead of success with consequence, it calls it tough choice. And just that alone sparked so much more ideas for me. So I'll give 2 examples. One, I had a player who just got hit with like a, like crawl, like one of those spinning daggers, etc. Hits him in the shoulder. He's at 1 hit point, and he's laying there. And his friend, his comrade, has a bad guy, tackling him and beating him and about to knock this friend unconscious. So he makes an attack, and he succeeds, but it's this tough choice. He rolls a tough choice. So what I told him was this: you can either you hit the target, but in the process of getting your crossbow to shoot that target, you're jarring yourself, and this just digs in more, so you fall unconscious, or you miss the target and you're still awake and you're going to be able to pull that out. And it just gave that much more thematic, like it put the agency on the player. Like, what do I think is more important right now? Another example is the same player, because we had these great tough choices with him. The same player was in a scenario where he was using this medallion and kind of going into this, multiple consciousness world. In essence, the main bad guy was controlling lots of different armies and lots of different units, and you could enter that sort of space where that consciousness existed, and he happened to have this medallion that allowed him to do that. But when you went in, you could see, oh, here's all these different consciousness, and here are these like spidery, like shadowy, filmy tendrils reaching into it. And he was going in trying to touch someone's consciousness, but by doing that, one of these tendrils comes shooting towards him. And he tried to get out of there, and he rolled a tough choice. And I told him, this is what you can do. You can either make contact with those tendrils and learn the objective that the enemy is trying to achieve. Like, you're going to know its motivations, but you're making contact with it, and you're going to, in essence, have a dark passenger. Like, it's going to infect you to the point where now when you're out of this medallion, it knows where you're at. It can't control you, but it knows where you're at. Versus, you can get the medallion off, it doesn't touch you, you're free, it's free, right? And so these just made some really thematic, really fun moments, and it was amazing to me that just the phrase tough choice versus succeed with consequence or succeed with a twist made all the difference for me as a DM. It made it more fun for the players. So in my game now, I want to add the tough choice mechanic, and I don't know how you do that. Like, maybe if you roll the exact number of like the target number. We have the target number in the dice system. You're rolling a d6, maybe the target number is 4. Maybe if you roll 4, that's a tough choice. If you roll above the target number, it's a hit, normal, everything. But if you roll the exact number, maybe that's a tough choice. That might be a mod, that might be an optional rule, but I love it. And I probably would play with it because the tough choice in this game was so fun. The other thing I want to just highlight in Quest that I thought was really cool was some of the powers were really interesting, and they did, once again, it was all these choices. It was the choices that it was giving the players that made it just so much more juicy. So here's an ability called Silver Tongue. And in essence, it's when you're, as a spy, in a scenario that you've got yourself into a bad scenario, you can spend 1 point, and then what happens is you get a choice to use one of these different methods to try and get yourself out of the scenario. Meaning that you try and tell the person that you were ordered to be here by someone of high authority. You try and feign ignorance. Oh, I wasn't supposed to be here. Or you try and craft, meaning you try to give them something valuable in some way, right? Maybe it's you construct an idea that this is a valuable idea for you, or you have something, etc. And what's amazing about this is that first, the DM, or the guide in this game, chooses which one of these is going to be correct. And then you as a player either will A, just guess which one out of the 3, 33% chance, or B, you could spend more points, in essence sort of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, to eliminate options. So do I spend 3 of my 10 AP, which those things do not come back easy if you haven't played the game. The game you have 10 to start with, and every day you rest, you get 5 back. So if you put yourself down to 1, you're only going back up to 6. They're very strict economy of actions. So do I spend 3 to make sure I can do it, or do I just, roll the dice? And this was a lot of fun because that player, the same player, he would just roll the dice on this. And so as an example, he was trying to communicate or get information from that tendrils when they reached him. And so he was trying to use this in some way at one point in time. And for me, this is like, an omnipresent, omnipowerful sort of like being. So it's not going to believe that something else had orders, that would tell you to do this. And it doesn't need anything you want because it's so arrogant and believes it knows all that you're not going to be able to give it anything. So it's looking for groveling, right? That old Ghostbusters, are you a god sort of thing. And so that's the one I chose. And my buddy was like, he went straight for craft. And it was fun to tell him the reasoning afterwards, but it's another choice. And so I loved that. And so I got to figure out how maybe I can add those kind of things into the Spark system potentially, and add that into some of the mechanics. So this was a quick video on Quest because I really enjoyed it. If you guys want, I'd be more than happy to do like a Matt Colville recap of the session. I wrote on all the notes down after playing it. It was a lot of fun. So if you guys want, send comments in the bottom, and maybe you do like, I don't know, like if we get over 15 likes or something, I'll do like a recap of that. It'd be a long video because it was 6-hour session, and I'll kind of recap in the same vein that Colville does, where he kind of tells you sort of his motivations, his thought process behind what he did and the choices. It won't just be, storytelling. But anyways, guys, hit the like buttons, hit the subscribe buttons, and leave some comments.